So the first one is, what are some healthy habits you implement to help you stay grounded? Regular exercise really gives me a time of day to just like reflect, and I think of it as a form of self-care. So I think once I got into the habit of doing some form of exercise regularly, set aside a time of day for myself to just think and reflect, and I think that's really important. And then also just building to-do lists has been really helpful for me to stay on top of tasks, and once I have like things organized in my calendar or on my notes app, I just find it like a lot less stressful to think about once I know what I have to do and when I have to do it by.
I make to-do lists, like very specific to-do lists every day, and make sure that I stay on track with the things that I actually set out on doing. So instead of just like listing out really general to-dos, like work on this project, I would write out specifically what I want to get done on that day. So for example, if I have a project that's due, I wouldn't just say like, oh, work on this project. I would actually say like, do research for an hour on this topic or something like that, to make sure that it's not overwhelming for me to look at that project.
For me, it's video games. It's a time for me to relax, forget about schoolwork, and get mad at some other things like my horrible teammates. It completely takes my mind off the stressful things in life, and when I'm done, I'm recharged and ready to start working again.
So 2 of the most notable healthy habits that I have implemented are journaling and being mindful of my screen time. For what it's worth, after coming into college and kind of talking to different people about how they coped with their stress or mental health fluctuations in high school, a lot of them mentioned journaling, both guys and girls. So I strongly encourage everyone who hasn't tried it out to try it out as soon as possible. I began actively journaling around the beginning of senior year, and it is one of those things that I really wish I started sooner. Once I started to develop my own style and kind of understand the pace at which I like to journal, I noticed a parallel growth in my ability to be reflective and therefore more grounded. Journaling really isn't for everyone, but it is one of those things that sounds a lot more intimidating than it actually is. And it is also one of those things that you kind of have to try out and experiment for yourself before you can make a final judgment about it. Second habit is being mindful of my screen time, especially when I'm feeling really stressed. Because for me, constantly refreshing social media is one of the ways that I detach myself from the present moment, even though it does spiral me into a very unproductive and mindless, kind of hole. This one for me takes a lot of self-discipline, but I try my best not to use my phone when I'm with other people, and I set pretty strict time limits on apps like Instagram and TikTok. And checking my screen time every day is one of the small things I do to kind of challenge myself to be more grounded and productive than the day before.
The second question is, as a junior, what healthy habits do you think sophomore students should implement into their daily lives? I think the 2 top habits that really any student can work on are having a good sleep schedule and having a good work ethic.
From a lifestyle point of view, I always try to sleep early consistently and get at least 7 hours of sleep every day. I try to sleep at the same time every night and not procrastinate on sleeping.
Having a set sleep schedule, especially because we're still teenagers and we're still growing, and having a good work ethic so that you're getting your work done on time. Those are just 2 super important habits I think everybody can always be working on.
A habit that I think every senior should implement into their daily lives is making sure that they step outside after coming home and before they go to sleep at least once. If you're coming home straight from school after D-block, or you have practice or a club meeting, you want to make sure you go outside at least one more time before you go to sleep, whether that's just taking a 5 to 10 minute walk after dinner or studying with some friends at Starbucks. This habit was the one that kept me awake, kept me moving, and usually put things into perspective when I thought I was drowning in a lot of work. When I go outside, when I talk to other people around me, I kind of realized that a lot of the stress that I'm experiencing is self-inflicted, which means that it's completely under my control.
I think especially for seniors out there, your schedules are going to get really busy and overwhelming, especially when college apps are due. So something that you should try to do is to do mood check-ins with yourselves. So in the morning, it's more like looking forward to your day, thinking about what are the things that you're excited about and what are the things that are potentially stressful. When you do this in the morning, you won't feel as overwhelmed when you go into your day seeing that you have a lot to get done. And at night, you should think about the things that happen during the day that you're grateful for, and also think about the things that happened during the day that upset you or made you feel stressed out or overwhelmed. When you do this, it's okay if there are a lot of negative emotions that happen during the day. It's more important for you to recognize that like having those negative emotions are a normal and natural part of being a senior and having such a busy schedule, and to come to terms with it rather than to deny yourself of them. Having this habit really made me feel more in control of my emotions overall during senior year.
And then the third and last question are, what are some tricks you used when first building your habits? For me, I think something that's really helpful for habit building is if you want to do something like go on a run every day or something like that, it's really helpful to set a time to do it at and then do it at that time every day.
When you're first building your habits, I'd say to try to associate it with an already established routine in your life. So for example, with the mood check-ins, in the morning you could do it on your way to school because you always have to, it's like an established part of your routine every day to go to school. So if you do it every day, then naturally you're gonna start thinking about it every day on your way to school. And at night it could be when you're showering, or I don't know, like after dinner, something that's already a part of your day that can remind you to do those habits.
When school starts catching up to you and you start to find the simple things like eating 3 meals a day or getting enough sleep starts to get really hard, it can be even harder to stick through with the things such as self-care or the habits I mentioned earlier that you kind of subconsciously put into a negotiable category. There will be times where you genuinely don't have the time, the energy, or the mental capacity to follow through with some of these habits, and honestly, like, that's completely okay. If sticking to a habit starts to feel like you are forcing yourself to do something that you don't see a purpose in, then that's just counterproductive.
If a habit doesn't really bring you a long-term benefit and it's just something that stresses you out or makes you feel like something that is an additional stressor in your life, then maybe reconsider why you're trying to follow that habit in the first place, because in the long term, like, a habit should serve you positively, and I think you should let the long-term benefits motivate you to keep sticking to that habit.
But I'll be honest, the best way to develop a habit is to just make it a habit. So start developing it as soon as possible, preferably when your workload is still light, so you have the time and the flexibility to start accommodating for it. And that way, once school starts weighing you down, once you get busier, it's already ingrained into your routine and it just feels like second nature.
I think once you start seeing the long-term benefits of those habits, it's easier to stick with them, and over time it's easier to kind of follow that habit just out of habit instead of like using a lot of willpower to force yourself into doing it.
The more you do it, the more you get used to it, and it's kind of like muscle memory.
So yeah, I think habits are a really important thing to incorporate into your daily life and into your routines. And having those healthy habits like having a good sleep schedule and exercising and getting your work done are super important to be successful in general. So I hope this helped. Thank you.